Hey everyone, welcome to Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. This podcast is all about farmers markets, how to increase your market business success while providing people with fresh food. Farmers markets are essential. Whether you're a farmers market manager or a small farmer or food maker selling at farmers markets, you have found just the right podcast. This week we're chatting with Vendor 101 graduate Libby Lefanowicz, the owner, founder, and chief maker of plant-based desserts at Kula Ice Cream in San Diego, California. Hey everyone, I'm one of your hosts, Bridget Myers. I'm a longtime farmers market manager, Vendor 101 co-teacher, and education coordinator at Farmers Market Pros.
And I'm Kat Fields-White, Director of San Diego Markets, still an active Farmers Market Manager, founder of Farmers Market Pros, and host of Intense, the Farmers Market Conference, and the Farmers Market Pros community.
And I'm Justine Marzoni-Mead, Tent Talk producer, marketing director for Farmers Market Pros, and logistics coordinator for Intense, the Farmers Market Conference 2022, coming up in March in person in San Diego.
Live and in person.
We're counting down.
Back to it.
It's happening.
Today's episode of Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is supported by Local Food Marketplace. Farmers market managers, farmers, and vendors upload information about available products onto user-friendly Local Food Marketplace websites created especially for them, adding thousands of dollars in pre-order sales to their monthly totals. Contact Local Food Marketplace for a demo and make selling local, fresh food even easier at your market wherever you are. Find them at localfoodmarketplace.com or just click their logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Well, welcome back to Tent Talk, everyone. Today we are speaking with Libby Lefanowicz of Kula Ice Cream. In 2019, Libby founded Coola, San Diego's first and only completely gluten-free and vegan ice cream company, with a catch. Her dairy-free frozen dessert actually tastes like real ice cream.
It does.
It's delicious.
It's amazing.
A practicing yogi, Libby named her company Kula, the Sanskrit word for inclusion and belonging, and invites everyone in to enjoy the simple pleasure of ice cream at her market and pop-up booths and her new retail storefront. Welcome to Tent Talk, Libby.
Yay! Thank you guys so much. I'm so excited. I think your guys' was the very first market I was in, was your Pacific Beach market.
That's right.
I think so. Yeah. Yes, and Libby is one of those, it's like we talk about like COVID babies, like born in the era of COVID. Libby's like a COVID vendor who like came into markets when we were doing these like crazy protocols. Right?
Did you? No. Yeah. When did you start?
No. So I got my my processed food registration in March 2021. I'm like ready to apply to you guys. I'm like, let's do this. Mm-hmm. And the next day, the California shut down.
Yeah, March 2020.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so she started, right? So she came into the Mercado when we were all, like, fenced off. Everyone had to wear masks. And we were like, kept telling her, like, this is not usually how markets are, but just hang on. But then it usually was for a long time. So.
Oh, funny.
At least a year. So it was all grocery items at first. So I only sold pints of ice cream. And just because I didn't ever make ice cream before this, I never had sold a scoop of ice cream. I didn't know how to scoop an ice cream cone. I didn't know how to make an ice cream cone. So it was like a year later, I had to suddenly be like, oh, now we do ice cream scoops. That would have been the first thing normally.
Well, sure, just because there's such good margin. I mean, the grocery side is a little bit better for farmers markets. A lot of markets are concentrated on groceries. But in terms of margin, I mean, I'm sure you're making more on scoops.
Yeah.
But it definitely makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So when there's no sampling and no eating on site, you're not doing that. And then once, this past summer when all the fences came down and everyone was like coming out to the market, and it was, especially in summer, everyone really wanted a scoop of ice cream. So you guys had to work like pretty quick. So that was awesome. But I think you were at our last in-person Vendor 101 class.
The very last one you did was
yes. The last one we ever did.
The last one we ever did in person. They've been online since then.
I see like our little chairs stacked up. We used to teach our class in person, and I'm like
single tier emoji.
It really is. There's like a little spider web on it. Anyways, okay, sorry, I'm jumping in a little bit, but I just that just like came to me in a flash of you setting up when we were all fenced in and panicked. All right. So anyways, we'll back up a little bit. So tell us a little bit about your personal and business background.
Yeah, so I actually have a background in IT, completely different. My undergrad is in computer science, and then my MBA is from UC San Diego in innovation and entrepreneurship.
Oh, well, that
very
makes
applicable.
One thing thing though that helped is the MBA, definitely, and just learning how to start a business. Although we were focused mostly on tech companies, it was, still the basics are the same there. So I had worked at startups. I had worked at some corporate IT environments. None of them I loved that much. But I knew I wanted to do something I was passionate about. So I'm sitting there working on the IT of, electronic health records, and it has parts that are cool, but I was like, I don't care about this that much. And how can I do something that I care about? So I kept looking for something in the environmental space. I was like, do I want to go be an activist? I eat mostly plant-based right now. So I'm thinking, do I want to do a company that promotes reducing single-use plastic, and start an those were the kind of things I knew I wanted to do. And then I actually went to Austin, Texas, and went to my very first vegan scoop shop, where it's a mecca of vegan ice cream. They have tons there, Nadamu, all the big brands started there. And I had this ice cream, and because I had, through my whole adult life, all these issues with my figuring out what I can and can't eat, what makes me feel crappy, either physically or mentally. I realized, or that I didn't want to eat, like just a lot of the politics behind dairy. And so I'm like, okay, do I have to, change my beliefs just to eat some dessert with my mom and dad? Like, that sucks. But so I felt this really connection to that vegan scoop shop, and it was what made me go, oh, maybe it's this.
Wow.
Cool.
I just want to say that Libby did her MBA and then she took Vendor 101. So we're kind of a PhD program, right?
I mean, it's we're like
she's a doctor in farmers market.
Yes. That's what we teach people to be. We come to us last to get
that's right.
Most
we're the cherry on the top.
Serious grad school.
Yes,
very rigorous.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because when I was looking at, questions you sent that you might ask, and when I was thinking about what I'd want to talk about, continued education is a theme in my life. I feel like you have to constantly be a lifelong learner. You can never sit there and go, no, I know everything. I took that class, so I know everything. Because I took the Vendor 101, but I actually went on, I know, I'll do a plug for her, for Retail Ready.
Oh yeah, she's awesome. We love her.
I mean, you just never, there's always more you can learn, and there's always experts. And then I actually ended up taking the ice cream class that they made. They did a vegan ice cream class at that vegan ice cream shop.
Wow.
Cool. A 1 week intensive of how to learn about vegan ice cream. And most people who take it are have an ice cream shop, like dairy, and they want to start making vegan ice cream too. But I just think it's really important, and it's so awesome that you guys provide things like that.
Yeah,
I love education.
Yeah.
If I could figure out a way to get somebody to pay me for just going to conferences and classes, I'd be so in.
It's the best. It's the best. I mean, and especially being a farmers market vendor, it's like things are changing and evolving and growing. This is like a, growing kind of industry. So of course you want to keep learning and staying on top of things you can do to increase your business and kind of staying visible and stuff. So, so you have that background with all that. I think that having a background in IT can also be very helpful with farmers market business. You kind of need a background in everything. So it doesn't matter where you come from. So you chose vegan ice cream because of maybe some stuff that you were going through and what you were eating. Are there any issues about calling a non-dairy product ice cream?
Oh, yeah.
You understand? Okay.
Yeah. You are not supposed to call vegan ice cream because the dairy industry owns the word ice cream. So I learned that in that vegan ice cream class that I took in probably, I think in early 2019. And so for the beginning of my company, I was always Coola desserts, Coola dairy-free frozen desserts. And I mean, it's just so silly. It's like it's ice cream, and I'm making chemistry-wise, and you talk about my science background, I'm making the exact same chemistry as dairy ice cream. I have the same amount of protein, fat, and sugar and water and air.
Oh, interesting. That's why it tastes so good.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I'm substituting, what my protein is. I'm using, for my fat, I use olive oil, like a rich, delicious fat. But the point that I was going to say was that you really have to, sorry, I totally lost my train of thought. I got so excited about my...
That's okay. Circle back.
Well, so we were talking about using the name ice cream and how that's not okay, but you do. So tell us about that.
Yes. So as my business progressed, so did the dairy industry, or the non-dairy industry, right? The plant-based foods. So over the past few years, plant-based foods have just exploded. I mean, you can find, I buy my plant-based cheeses. I used to only be able to find them at a farmer's market, and now I can get them at Smart and Final.
Well, don't. Go ahead and shop it.
Buying them at the farmer's market. Come on. We're deleting that. We're editing that out.
Come to the farmer's market.
That you can. It is important that the industry has changed. And so some of these plant-based products brands that have gotten really, really large have actually gone in and started suing the dairy industry. And so they Mykonos just won a huge lawsuit. Mykonos is a dairy, basically a dairy-free butter company. And they won a huge lawsuit last week that they're allowed to call their butter.
Oh,
wow.
So technically, there's no lawsuit about the ice cream yet. But I started seeing other things. Van Leeuwen is a very popular ice cream company, and they also have a big section of their products are dairy-free. I saw their sign, their new New York store says ice cream and vegan ice cream.
Oh, good.
Okay.
And they're probably in a good point to leverage that because, I mean, if the dairy people irritate them too much.
Yeah, they sell dairy products as well.
Yeah, they're a client. Van Leeuwen's a client of theirs because they're also buying milk. So, yeah, it's good. And it's just, people getting the alternative and progressive companies getting big enough to pay for lawyers and pay for lobbyists, just like the gigantic dairy industry is good. We need the farmers market industry to get that big.
Yeah.
Working on it.
Yeah, when do we file? Where do I sign?
Who are we going to sit with? Smart and Final.
Very important. I still am not brave enough to put it on my label. So, my wholesale label won't say ice cream until it legally can.
Let Van Leeuwen take that. They're bigger. They've got the attorneys.
Yeah, because smaller
Let
companies,
them be the target.
Yeah, can seem like easier targets for people that are suing, small businesses or people like using the terms ice cream and things like that. So I think that's probably smart, is just to leave it off if you can and let the kind of big dogs fight it out, and then it can hopefully it'll pass with where you can label things ice cream. So.
Yeah, but that's really interesting, and also just like a great example of like, as a small business owner, why you have to be a lifelong learner and stay up on stuff like this, and because little businesses tend to be targets for stuff like this. And if you just don't know and you put a term on there that is like proprietary or legally off limits, then that could be sad news.
It's true, because the big companies will use those little companies that can't afford to fight it to get a precedent-setting case.
Yeah.
So it's easy for them to go after somebody smaller that can't afford to fight back. So smart. Good job, Libby. Staying ahead of this.
Yes, so that's smart. So when you started Coola, did you start with doing online orders and delivering, or did you start when you jumped in the farmer's market, was that your first selling?
I basically, that March 2020 date was when I got the food permit. So I went, well, shoot, what do I do now? And I had all this momentum. And then because of the pandemic, I had additional motivation. I didn't have any other of my consulting jobs going on. All my public sector stuff went, they freaked out the most. Public sector went, nope, stop everything. I have no idea what's happening next. They don't like change. And so I went, okay, I have this website, and you just click this extra button that says, make it an online store, let's try it. And interesting thing that was hard was to choose what flavors to put. I made all these fun flavors. I'm was going to use the farmer's market to every week bring new flavors, test them out. And now I'm like, okay, I need to choose 5 flavors, I guess, and decide what the labels look like, and let's start selling them. So I actually started selling them online, and I was renting Maya's Cookies Kitchen at that time at night. And it was before she had her big, huge boom. So I did a night shift at Maya's Cookies, and then I got in my car and delivered ice cream during the day.
Wow. So that was, a little silver lining is that you had the time to kind of figure that out and start that way when everything else was a little frozen in your other sector. So now you can say it was nice. Yeah, and there was no traffic.
There you go. That's true.
There was no traffic.
That's right.
Very eerie.
Yeah. So then delivering, and then you came into the farmers market. So your goal was always to be at farmers markets. You just did the delivery and online ordering as kind of a
sort of a stopgap.
Yeah, a little in between while things were shut down.
Exactly. And it was a bummer because I didn't get that direct customer feedback that I wanted. That was my biggest goal of the farmers market. However, I did get a lot of traction. I mean, for like $30 in Instagram a week, I got up to selling like $1,000 worth of ice cream.
Oh, good job.
Wow.
So thank you. It was like the reason that I was able to get funding and all these things is I could show, look, here's my financials. People buy ice cream. Yes, it's a pandemic and they're liking it delivered extra, and that went away. The delivery demand totally went away. Could never recreate it again. But it was enough to get me started and show investors that people did want to buy ice cream.
Wow,
that's great.
So that's interesting. So the delivery business has faded.
Yeah. Oh, huge. And the people who love it, like my most loyal customers, they really love it. And when I had to stop, I recently, when we opened the storefront, stopped it completely because I just couldn't staff it. I couldn't have one of my staff members just maybe do 6 deliveries.
Yeah.
And the traffic's back.
Traffic's back.
Yeah, for sure. So now you're really focusing on farmers markets and obviously on your new storefront. That's exciting. How many markets are you in now?
So we got up to 9 markets, and
wow,
too many. So we are at 6 markets, but it gives me the ability to on a week that there's like there was Pride Festival in Hillcrest, there was the North Park Book Fair. I now have the ability to pop up that extra 3 or 4 markets in a busy week when there's an opportunity for awesome sales.
And you do probably some of the vegan festivals and things, right? The pop-ups where it's all vegan. Yeah, I know those have been huge, at least in this area. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're seeing them in a lot of places, actually. I saw a lot of them in London year before last. It was amazing, but it's been a big deal, I know, in our area, and I've seen some cities back east where it's really hopping.
Yeah.
So usually we would say, what'd you find the most challenging about starting your business in farmers markets? But I feel like that's kind of redundant because obviously COVID. So on an ongoing basis, what kind of things have you found to be a continuing challenge?
Great question. I think staffing is the number one thing, right? So that's another reason that we're at 6 and that's pretty steady, is because I love doing the farmers markets too. So I'm always like, I'll just do it. I'll just do another one. I'll just do another one. I'll do it on Tuesday too. And then you don't have time to grow your business if you're working in your business. So really trying to find these, mostly all ladies, it just has happened that way, but who are just, I trust them with my brand. I trust them. So I trust them so much with my brand. The other day I was out of town and we got a call to be on the news. And my PR lady was like, no, you can't do it. You're not here. And I was like, nope, my girls can do it. I know they can do it. They sit there and they represent my brand every day at the farmers market. They will do great in front of a camera, and they did.
Yeah, and they really do. Your staff
is really great.
Yeah, you're clearly doing a good job of hiring because your staff is very much on your brand. If you didn't, I knew what you looked like because of the class, but other managers, assistant managers at our markets have no idea that you're not in the booth. They think she is Libby just because she's, your staff is so tied into your brand, and so they give consistent answers no matter what staff person you're dealing with, and they really understand. So you must be doing a good job of training. Do you have a real formalized training program?
We do just make sure everyone does like a couple weeks of training where they come with, and they go with every person. So everyone does have their own style, so a new person coming on will have to go to every single market with all the different people and get that rundown of how they say each of the things about each of the flavors, and how they explain my story, which is a big thing too.
So it's obviously you've overcome an unusual level of challenges since you were a COVID vendor baby, but you've managed. Is there anything now that you're in sort of a quote-unquote normal kind of environment at the markets? Is there a particular piece of advice that you'd give somebody that wanted to start their own farmers market business nowadays?
Oh, great question. I was thinking about that. I think that obviously the vendor 101 did help. Even, I have my MBA. I know how to do marketing. I know how to do the operations, each of the pieces, but I had no idea what order to do all my permitting in, or what order to start my LLC, and all that stuff was never covered, even in a business 101 course. So I think that's a huge thing, whether you do a course like that or something similar where you really sit down and you make that list of here's the order to do things in. And then the other thing is, you don't just go to a farmer's market and start selling. And I think people don't realize that at all. Like, it takes time and it takes money. You don't just get a tent and just go, okay, I'm ready to be a market vendor now. And I think even my close friends and family didn't, oh yeah, great, you're at the market. And I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of work to be at the
It's a real business.
Yeah, and a serious investment. That's one of the things we try to teach in Vendor 101 is so many people say, oh, it's a tent. I've been camping. I can do that. And they're like, that's just the very first little tiny part of it. And it is, a reason, certainly a lower barrier to entry than starting a scoop shop. But but still, I mean, there's a significant investment. And right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because you need to have enough ingredients. You have to buy packaging. And even if you buy the cheapest packaging, you still have to buy each of the pieces, and each of those are $70. And then you have to buy your pop-up tent, and then you have to buy 6 coolers, and then your coolers break, and 1 cooler doesn't last you that long. There's a lot of things that you have to constantly be on top of. And I actually ended up, one of my staff, I kind of promoted her from farmers market manager to like the overseer of all my farmers markets, because she keeps track of, do we have enough cups? Do we have enough napkins? Do we have enough bags? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there really is. Well, you do a great job of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to dive in a little bit more specifically about your product, because you are one of those vendors that has a unique product. It fills a need. People want it, and also it tastes really good. It's like one of those like magic combinations of all of those things. So, and what's amazing about it is each week you do introduce a lot of new flavors, do a great job of bringing in seasonal flavors. So how do you come up with those ideas? And then also, how as a business owner, do you have time to do that all the R&D it takes to develop a new flavor that's quality while also doing all the other things that you do?
It's hard. So I spend a couple hours every Monday coordinating just the operations of what flavors we bring to what markets, how much is left of inventory and what's going to what market. In terms of coming up with new flavors, I think one thing I learned is that I was told this really early on is ice cream companies, in your off season, make sure you do R&D so you're ready for releasing those flavors in the summer. Obviously, it doesn't always happen that way, and you don't, or something that, a new flavor that you thought we were going to in September release orange creamsicle instead of releasing pistachio, but I can't find the vegan Cool Whip anywhere. I mean, we drive to stores everywhere, so it's not always going to work out. And suddenly you're like, okay, you want to make up a pistachio flavor? People love it, and they can. It'll be at Little Italy for the first time on Saturday. You guys can
it was good. And you brought back Why Not, which is like my favorite of your flavors. I have a quick question, though. When you say off-season, I mean, especially here in San Diego, is there an off-season for ice cream? Like, is there a season... Okay, group, is there some season of the year that you guys don't eat ice cream? Because I eat ice cream all year.
Personally, no.
I mean, I would eat ice cream at home all year round, but getting a scoop of ice cream, I probably wouldn't get a scoop. Like in February or whatever.
Yeah, okay.
But I'd eat it at home after dinner.
Yeah, for sure. But last winter would probably be like a special case for you, and I'm curious, comparing your numbers, because San Diego was in like a serious lockdown last winter, and so the markets were open, but it was like still a little wild. So I'm curious what your sales will be this winter, especially now that you're doing scoops and things like that. Because I do see we had popsicle vendors and things like that who would still do well during the winter. But I think a scoop of ice cream, like when you're out, is probably more of a warmish weather.
That's true.
Thing.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, me too. I was just looking at the expiration dates of some of our tubs of ice cream. We have different sizes at, pints, tubs, and 3 gallons. And so I was just looking at expiration dates of some of the 3 gallons. And I was like, okay, those are coming up in October. So do I need to be concerned that our sales are going to go down in October like they did last time? But we had no scoops of ice cream. Remember, we were only selling the pints, which right now is half my sales is pints, half of it is scoops at each market day. So if those are going to go down, do I need to be prepared with my ice cream demand? Ice cream has the pros and cons where it does last longer in a freezer than a lot of perishable products. Because I work closely with Maya's cookies, you only get a couple days. You got to make that cookie. You got to sell that cookie. You need to know how many cookies you're going to sell. I have a longer demand, but I still have to figure out how much of each flavor can I make, and will it last until its expiration date?
Yeah. Well, that'll be interesting. Last year was such an anomaly, and and this is another thing with a small business. It takes you a couple years to get that data where you're starting to see these trends, because it's just wild, especially as a new vendor. A lot of people are excited and they see it, and then maybe the next year is a little bit down, and so you'll find your stride and see your data. But you mentioned
your guys' positivity about it being a no down season. I'm like, yes.
You have your little we're your little panel here. We decided that we all eat ice cream in the winter, so you'll be fine.
You're good.
Yeah, it'll be okay.
You'll be good.
But speaking of Maya, so for our listeners that don't know, Libby early on shared a space with another one of our popular farmers market vendor and baker, Maya Madsen, who we've had on the podcast a few times. So can you share a little bit about the decision to eventually get your own commercial kitchen and kind of how that came about?
Yes, I had to. So I say had to, but so I hit a plateau of sales. So I actually got to $10,000 in sales. I think it was in September 2020, and I couldn't do any more than that. So there was the storage space. So Maya has, a kitchen, and that's as much space as there is. And there's enough room for 2 of my freezers, and that's how much room there is. So that was a huge thing. I couldn't make any more ice cream. I couldn't store any more ice cream. But then the other thing was just so hard burnout. Working at and I know a lot of my other fellow vendors that I talk to, and when I see them, I just give them so much props. When you sell all day, either at farmers markets or calling grocery stores or calling on, going to grocery stores, and then all night you make your product, it is so hard. I couldn't grow anymore. I couldn't go to a single more market. I couldn't go to a single more grocery store. I was terrified of selling ice cream. I was like, my boyfriend would be like, why aren't you selling? Why don't you go to this store? And I'm like, because they might buy it. And then I have to be up until not 3 a.m., but 4 a.m.
They're going to order from me, so I can't go there.
I'm scared.
And I knew it wasn't sustainable. So luckily, though, I had that growth to show, like I said, so I was able to get the promise from the investors, and it took months, though. Talk about your own commercial kitchen. It took me months, and I got lucky. This catering company went out of a large corporate catering company, had a San Diego branch, and their San Diego branch went out of business, and they had only been open for a little bit. So luckily I was able to afford it because I didn't have to do the really hard stuff of the commercial kitchen, the hood and the plumbing and the electrical. That was already, the shell was there.
Yeah, that's great.
Oh, that's really great.
I couldn't have done, I don't know, maybe I would have had to wait longer. I don't know how I would have done it without it, but I got really lucky.
Well, that's great. We're so happy for you. As somebody that did the food business, I totally understand that level of burnout where you're like, you're kind of limiting yourself because you can only produce so much. And then there is that fear of, if I sell all of this, then I have to make more. And it's kind of this you're stuck in this crazy trap. So, but that's fantastic that you're able to get your own space so you can increase your production and kind of just like ease everything up a little bit.
And your daytime production, no less, right? You can actually make it in the day.
I work regular hours.
That's amazing.
I work till 7 or 8 p.m., but that is okay.
It's like the vendor dream.
So obviously, you're kind of at this, you've reached this next level, and a lot of food vendors, they do start out in these shared commercial kitchen spaces, whether they're renting from another food maker or somebody that operates the commercial kitchen space. So do you have any advice for people that are in these shared spaces, how to kind of like communally exist with other food makers, or just some words of wisdom for people that aren't at your level yet?
I think I had a very interesting experience with it, because when in June 2020 Maya's cookies went viral and she hit 1,000% increase in sales, just nuts. And so suddenly she needs her kitchen 24 hours a day, and I'm like, oh, but I have a business too. What can we do? And so it was just so important, I think, to be so considerate of the other vendors in the space. So there were two, Tracy's of Tracy's Real Food and Maya's Cookies at the time. And so I really stepped it up, and I went to Maya and I said, how can I help you? What can I do to organize this? How can we make this work? So I rented a storage unit. So I did have, I couldn't put food there, obviously, but I could put all my farmers market stuff there. And I just helped Maya with the schedule. So I would make spreadsheets each week about like when every person was coming in, and, when Maya was coming in. During the holiday season, when Maya was booming, we would just have to start later. Sometimes she was decorating gingerbread cookies until 9 p.m. And sometimes we would just sit together, like we'd start making ice cream, and she'd be right in, it's a small space, and she'd be right there decorating her gingerbread cookies. And I'd be like, Maya, you have to go home and sleep. Not enough. But just like really just being able to be respectful of both people's businesses both ways, because it was so considerate of her to let us stay. I mean, she didn't have to do that. And so I'm just so grateful for her help.
Great advice. Yeah, just recognizing everybody's got to run a business.
Everybody's got needs.
Mm-hmm. Everybody has employees. Everybody, has to put food on the table, and just kind of respecting each other's space. That's great.
Yeah, working together.
So a little bit about your production team. Like we said before, you obviously have amazing on-site farmers market employees. Are those the same gals that are helping you in the kitchen? Are they cross-trained? How do you manage production and sales of ice cream?
Right. Yeah. So my very first move when I got some funding was getting a kitchen help, because ice cream's a lot of work. It's hard. And when it comes out of that, I got an Emery Thompson 24-quart Emery Thompson. Oh, sorry. No, of course they're blending. I got a 24-quart Emery Thompson ice cream machine, and it was tough to have that much ice cream come out of the machine that fast and try to do it all myself. So first one person that came on was was my kitchen staff. And then the next thing that I did was start having her go every once in a while to markets.
The sound of ice cream in production.
That is what ice cream sounds like. We're blending nut milks. I'm so sorry.
It's all right.
We'll make it work.
We keep it real here.
We've interviewed lots of people in their kitchens.
We've seen a baby be changed. We've seen farm animals. It's all right.
And so let's see. So that was Emily, and Emily is my core. She's my rock. I mean, she's like, she'll run to. This morning she just was like, Libby, our plums aren't ripe enough, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this podcast. Brianne's going to this market. Can you go get more plums and then come back and then make all the plum sorbet? So she is absolutely my rock. And then she does markets whenever when I really need her to, but she doesn't like that. What she likes is she likes cooking. So I really try to make sure that all of my staff get to, and as much as possible, do what they like. I love having these ladies grow, and they get to advance their career as our company grows, which is so cool. So everyone has to pull their weight, of course. But I have my farmers market vendor, farmers market ladies who there's 4 of them who all rotate markets, and they all help each other cover shifts when they need to. But all 4 of them have also been able to jump in and do marketing stuff. Now that we opened our first vegan ice cream shop, they jump in and they can do, a quick shift at the store if they need to. And then also even actually, I have the marketing girls do help with ice cream sometimes, the side work. You got to chop almonds, you have to cut coffee beans, you have to cut the plums. So they're doing everyone's doing all of those things. And something that has helped us a lot is we have a lot of lists. This is your opening and closing list for this. This is what you bring to this event list. This is our, you should see our walls. They're writable walls. So the whole back wall is just these lists of, this is what you bring to a market if you're doing these things. This is what you bring to a market if you're doing these things. So at any time, anyone can jump in and help each other.
I think it's really valuable for vendors, and I find the same thing with farmers. And we heard some from Nathan McCauley, actually talked about that last year, is it's so important for the people at the market to at least have some exposure to production.
Yeah.
So the farmers that sell a lot at markets, generally speaking, their staff does something at the farm. Whether it's picking or whether it's loading those boxes or feeding the animals or what have you. And same thing with food makers. If the market staff is at least a little involved, at least doing that little bit of sous chef stuff, chopping the almonds, whatever, so that they have a sense of the effort and the heart that it takes to produce that product. Yeah. They're such better salespeople at the markets. Yeah. Customers know the difference.
Yeah, people can, and also so much of the farmers market experience is customers being able to ask questions,
right,
and the staff being able to answer them. And I'm just imagining right now with the plums, if at the market on Saturday, someone's like, oh, awesome, where are these plums from? And if the sales gal knows that they came from this or this farm, that's going to, clinch that sale. Where if they say, oh, I'm not sure, then the person's going to be like, all right, well, check it out next week, that's great to have them all
having those answers is great. So in your plan, was there always a plan to have a brick and mortar scoop shop? And is your scoop shop in the front of your production facility, kind of like Maya's?
It is so cool. So it was not my plan. It was a long-term plan. Like, and then we'll open San Diego's first all-vegan ice cream shop because there's not one here, and I want one here.
I hate to tell you this, but there actually is a fully built-out shop on India Street right now that's available. So just putting a bug in your ear. It probably costs $1 million, but the rents there are so ridiculous. But it'd be a great place for a scoop shop.
Real estate costs, man. Wow. That would be a thing. So, but that's one of the reasons why. So it was every once in a while something would pop up, like a little place and grow. There's a vegan hub kind of growing in food stuff in Grossmont Center, or Maya would look at a place and maybe mention it to me, like, hey, I actually heard about this little retail shop place. Would you like to look at it? And I was like, yeah. Well, it's so expensive. And then the places I did look at were like, you have to build out the plumbing, or there's no hood. Unfortunately, I needed a hood even for ice cream, which is silly. And then I also needed the grease trap, because ice cream is huge for the grease trap because it's catching oil. And, like I said, we have the fat in our ice cream, just like regular ice cream. So once we were, so I never went the ice cream shop route at first, and we found this amazing commercial kitchen. Great. It is a big space. There's 1,500 square feet, which is a huge facility. And I kept getting questions about, like, are you going to open a shop? And everyone wanted to pick things up. We make gluten-free vegan ice cream cakes, and people wanted to pick them up. And I'm like, we don't have a place for you to pick anything up. I guess we'll deliver it. So then we're driving around with these like 6 different coolers in our cars with dry ice at the bottom to drop off these $70 cakes, which is just not quite enough money to hand deliver 6 to 12 cakes every week. So it just kept growing as like a need. And then having a space for meetings. And when I had a grocery, someone who did an online grocery store, like, hey, can I come meet you at your shop? I'm like, I don't have one. So just more and more reasons to have a shop kept coming up. And I just suddenly, I kind of was like, okay, let's do it. Let's push everything back 10 feet. I also had a little bit extra funding because it was like $8,000 for a scoop cabinet, the dipping cabinet. That was going to be the big thing. But I was like, hey, if I can open an ice cream shop for, $8,000 plus another like $4,000 for the decorations. That's a deal.
Yeah.
And then everything after that is just, makes another profit stream.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And you've got staff on site, and it definitely makes sense. So 5 years from now, what's Coola going to look like? How many scoop shops you going to have? How many markets you going to be in? Going to be wholesale on the shelves? Or, is wholesale part of your plan? Or do you like the direct-to-consumer, keep the retail price?
So I want to be a brand. I want to be a lifestyle brand that is, Coola is having fun, San Diego lifestyle without the dairy, and, being roller skating on the beach and eating your ice cream. And so I want to continue to grow and bring that concept as a retail shop to more and more places. However, that is something that's done. San Diego didn't have one, but there is in almost every major city a couple of dairy-free ice cream shops. So then we have some side ideas. One is the wholesale. And so that's why I did take that retail ready course, for example, and starting to really learn how to get into the wholesale. And the biggest thing for me is getting a distributor. So I'm working on how do you, in parallel, you have to convince a distributor and a chain grocery store at the same time. So the distributor won't take you on until you've convinced the chain grocery store, and the chain grocery store won't take you on until you have a distributor that's going to bring it.
It's the chicken and the egg.
It is. And that's why God made Allie Ball.
Yeah.
So huge working on the wholesale growth and continuing to grow also what I call my mom and pop wholesale growth, which is us directly delivering. And I think that honestly is something wholesale margins are really difficult, right? You have to do a lot of volume to make up for how small your margins get when you have a distributor taking 22% off the top. And then the freezer margins in frozen are 43%. So if you take how much I get, and then how much the distributor gets, and then how much the grocery store gets, and then the consumer only wants to pay $9.99, maybe you get an $11.99 product on the shelf, depending on where you are. So there's challenges. Wholesale is my next goal. And then the big thing that we're going to do as well is I love that we make gluten-free vegan ice cream cakes. I haven't seen that like anywhere. And so I love that I get to eat. We did a photo shoot of it last night. So I got to eat I had to eat mint chip and chocolate cake with mint chip ice cream on top. And so I'm hoping that we can figure out a way to really grow the kind of extra products that we have. So the gluten-free vegan ice cream cones that we make from scratch, and then the gluten-free vegan ice cream cakes. So see if there's channels for those.
Yeah, smart, really well-differentiated new products. So you've got a lot of growth and farmers markets. Does that fit into that long-term plan?
Oh, yeah. So I think it would be really cool to kind of recreate, and there's a lot of challenges in it, and I know, but I think it would be really cool to recreate what we're doing here in the LA area, like have a hub in either in Inland Empire or in LA area, because there's so many vegan festivals. There's weekly vegan festivals in Long Beach and in Corona and Riverside and downtown LA. So if we have someone, if I can hire someone who is really good and I trust, and we get a processed food registration verified warehouse with big freezers in that area, and then they can go ahead and grow a farmers market business in that area too. That would be awesome, and that's definitely on our list.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm glad to hear you're going to keep farmers markets in the mix. We oftentimes see people open retail stores, and they always intend to keep doing the markets. And a little slice of them do keep doing the markets because they know it's important to keep that face-to-face relationship with consumers. And it's instead of paying for a focus group, you're getting paid to be at the market where you've got this terrific focus group. But it's also a challenge because if you don't have a differentiated staff, somebody calls in sick, you're not going to close the shop. You're going to call out on your market. So it is a challenge. Not everybody can do it, but we love to hear that you're planning to keep markets and pop-ups as part of your mix.
Yeah, we have abandonment issues.
Yeah, we have abandonment issues on those folks that grow and leave us. Empanada Shop, I'm talking to you.
And Maya's and Eric from 7C's both got on our podcast and promised that they wouldn't leave us.
That's right.
So now we have you recorded saying that you're going to,
Yeah, we took the pledge.
That's right. Let's play it back and embarrass you.
This is enough.
No, I think it's so important to your brand too. And we actually, this week, we won 2 awesome awards. So on San Diego Magazine did Reader's Choice Best of San Diego 2021, and we won the Best Farmers Market Vendor, as well as Best Overall Ice Cream.
Wow.
That's huge.
Best ice cream in San Diego.
Send that to the dairy industry.
Yeah. That's right. I'm talking to you, dairy farmers. And I absolutely agree. We joke about certain products, and Maya's is the first one actually that we used to talk about with this, but yours is another one where we do a sampling panel for anything that wants to get into our market. And a lot of times you'll get responses when we're tasting vegan products or plant-based products that are typically made other ways, and they'll say, "Oh, this was a really good baked good for a vegan baked good." Mm-hmm. But with Maya's and with you, same reaction. It was, "Whoa, this is really good ice cream." Not, "This is really good for vegan ice cream."
This is really good plant-based.
Yeah, this is really good plant-based. It was just, "Whoa, this is good ice cream."
Yeah.
And we've always felt like that, and so go right on there, San Diego Magazine readers. Good choice. Good choice.
I love that.
San Diego.
Yes. I think I didn't realize that when your samples came in that everything was plant-based too, because I can't have tree nuts. And so we were like picking out the ones with almond milk and pistachios and stuff that I couldn't have. And then I think I tried like the unicorn poop, which is so good. But it was made with coconut milk or something. So, but I didn't realize that it was vegan. I was like, this is such good ice cream. Oh my gosh. And then I realized, this doesn't have any dairy in it. Yeah. It's so good. Yeah. So I really not that people need to do that, but it will help kind of break that barrier with people who want to eat kind of healthier or vegan options or vegetarian, and then if it tastes a little more similar to what they're used to, it kind of eases them into the whole system. So
we really admire what you've done. We're going to cling tightly to how proud we are of our little piece in getting you started with Vendor 101. But it's
we
been
taught her everything she knows.
Not really, child. Not really, but we taught her a little bit so that she could take everything she knows and move it forward. But thank you so much for being with us today. Really instructive conversation. I think this is going to be really helpful to food makers that are listening. Yeah, and for managers to understand kind of the vendor side of it and everything that you guys have to deal with and go through, and how important it is to continually educate your vendors too, so everyone's learning. Yeah. Thanks so much, Libby. We really appreciate it.
Guys, talk to you soon.
All right.
Take care.
Soon. In person.
Thanks for listening today, and big thanks to Local Food Marketplace for making it easy to increase farmers market sales with online pre-orders, and for supporting Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast. Find more information and request a demo by clicking the Local Food Marketplace logo on the resource page at farmersmarketpros.com.
Farmers markets are all about connection, and all of us, operators, farmers, and vendors, keep learning. Join us at the 6th Annual Intense the Farmers Market Conference in San Diego, California on March 7th, 8th, and 9th, 2022 to grow your market and your community. Connect over in our private Facebook group, the Farmers Market Pros community, with active farmers market managers and participants. You can also message us on Instagram at Farmers Market Pros or email us at connect@farmersmarketpros.com. To further your farmers market education, check out our online courses at farmersmarketpros.com. Thanks so much for listening to Tent Talk. Please leave us a review wherever you access your podcasts, and be sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Tent Talk, the Farmers Market podcast, is proudly produced by Farmers Market Pros, where passion meets profit. Today's episode was recorded and edited by Justine Marzoni-Mead. Original music by David Mead. Thank you so much for listening today, and we'll have another great episode next week. Tune in.